All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Out and Up. I'm your host, Matt Lowe. Proud to welcome Dan Mathews from 680 The Fan, primarily of the Chuck Oliver Show, onto the show today. What's up, Dan? How you doing?
How you doing, buddy?
Doing good, man. As we were talking about a minute ago, our Braves kind of gave one away today, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. It's the afternoon malaise, I guess you could say, of, you got to have that quick turnaround, that 12:20 start today. It's a getaway day. It's all that kind of stuff. They still had a chance to win it. And especially, too, with what happened in Milwaukee, that eighth inning hurts even a little bit more today. But the good news is you're still one game out, and you go take on a Phillies team that has been pretty much reeling since they left here last weekend. So go up to Philly and try to win a series. And the Mets got to go across over to Oakland. And, it's the time of year when you got a lot of young guys on that A's team that are trying to earn spots at this level. So you're hoping that maybe they can jump up and get the Mets for a couple of these games and allow you to be able to get back in position where the following weekend you would love to have a chance for a clinch at Truist Park. But first things first, just got to go up to Philly and win that series first and then worry about everything else from there.
Yeah, I'm going to be at that last series with the Mets. I think I'm going to be there Saturday night. So while we're on the Braves, let's just stay there. I mean, this team I wrote down right here, they 70-29 since June 1st. The franchise record for wins in that amount of time. I mean, Kenley Jansen scares me at the end of the bullpen, at the back end of games sometimes. But what's your take on this team? Do you really think there's a weakness on this team?
I think that right now the thing that concerns me is the struggles of Austin Riley, Matt Olson. Relative struggles, I guess you could term it, with Ronald Acuna Jr. I think that a lot of that is rust coming back from the ACL last year. I think that also, too, it might just be that part in his career where there's a little bit of a book on him. And he's got to, be able to make an adjustment, which sometimes that takes an offseason to work on. Sometimes you can get it done, at a certain point in the season. I mean, if there's anything we know about Ronald Acuna Jr., we know that he is somebody that can get going really in a moment's notice. So, that's something that we'll have to see if they can be able to do. So as of right now, that's really the only concern I have with this team.
So no concerns with Kenley?
So, yeah, I mean, I understand that one just from the standpoint of, I think that the frustration with that is that, he's not the shutdown closer. Now, he will get you some 3-up, 3-down innings, but it seems like it's kind of like the life we lived with Will Smith last year, right? Where it was, you get that leadoff runner on with a double, and then maybe the next guy walks, and you're kind of like, uh-oh, here we go. But he'd find a way to get out of it. Last night, luckily, he was able to find a way to get out of it. He's got a little bit of that movement back, too, on that cutter. I mean, when he's got that cutter working, he's one of the best in the league for a reason. And, I understand, too, the frustration of when there's blown saves. I mean, right now you're looking at that Seattle game. There's been a couple of others, too, as well, that you look at and just say, man, just if you had been able to latch those down, you're looking at a different situation now in the NL East race. But as it stands at this moment, you're one game out. You're still in a good spot. And, it's pretty much like what Austin Riley told us today. You just got to win those games and go from there.
Yeah, and the one thing about Kenley that well,
I don't know what happened. It just shut down on me.
Nah, yeah, that's okay. The one thing about Kenley, too, that's been a little alarming is he's been getting hurt with other pitches besides the cutter. That's my thing. I mean, but it looks sharp these last couple of games. But that's my thing with him. Why get beat with your third best pitch? But he is one of the best of all time. And the thing about him is he's been there, done that in the playoffs. So when the crowd's going and the pressure's on, I think he'll perform.
No, you're exactly right, Matt. I mean, he did it for a long time with the Dodgers. He was a World Series winner with the Dodgers, despite what you want to call the 2020 season. But also, too, as well, I think that the good news is with this team and this bullpen is if you get Kenley Jansen going, I think that, we talked about it today on Chuck and Chernoff, you can shorten the games to 5 innings where you can, not have to rely on your guys to go, 6, 7 innings. I mean, let's be honest here. If you go 5 innings as a start in the baseball postseason, especially as you get longer into it, as we found out in the NLCS and in the World Series, going at least 5 innings is basically a quality start. So you're really getting to a point where, you can't give away runs and say, hey, we'll get it back later. The pitching's too good that time of the year. The teams are too good that time of the year. So you got to pitch to situations. And I think that that's something else that's going to be interesting to see with this team is, how they're able to do that and, and how they, in turn set up their rotation to in turn set up the bullpen.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I mean, you look at it, you go Max Fried, Strider, and Kyle Wright. I don't know if there's a better threesome out there than those three. And then you can use Charlie Morton because he's such a strikeout guy. You can bring him in and let him go a couple innings if necessary, or if you can give him a start too because he is really good. But I mean, I think they're going to have a lot of flexibility, when they get into the postseason. And if you look at this roster, first base all-star, 2 good second basemen now. I mean, shortstop's one of the best. Third baseman's one of the best. They have the best catcher combination in major leagues. I mean, so it's just amazing that Michael Harris out in center, and I think Rosario's a guy that I think he likes the moment. And if
he's starting to get going, yeah.
I mean, and you got Acuna in right field, so this team is loaded. And you know what, Dan? Not a lot of people are talking about him. It seems like and that's. I'm like, these guys are really, really good.
No, they are. And, here's the thing that I talked about the other day on the air is I think that the Mets honestly feel like they have to win the East. I think the Braves want to win the East, and definitely it's an ultimate goal for them, and they want to be able to have that. So then you can avoid, that first round of going out to LA. But here's the thing that I tell Braves fans also as well. You're probably going to have to face the Dodgers, but I understand that you want to face them in the NLCS. At the same time, they're the number 1 team in the National League. You're going to be going out there regardless. I get it that you want to be able to do it now in the NLCS as opposed to the DS, but I think the Braves still, they could be able to make their way through the wild card round and go from there. Excuse me. I don't think the Mets can.
And one thing, too, about the Dodgers, no Walker Buehler. I mean, they got Julio Urias. I mean, yeah, he's a stud, but no Walker Buehler. That's big, in my opinion, when you get in the postseason. And I just, they got some younger guys in their rotation now, but I just think the Braves aren't going to be intimidated of the Dodgers. But I do think one thing, I think the Cardinals could be a dangerous team just because of their lineup and the way they play defense. And I just don't know if they got the starting pitching.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, too, is, I getting back to what I said about the Braves in the wild card round, I think that the Mets, if they don't win the East, it's 2 years in a row that we've done this. It's 2 years in a row that we've led this thing for most of the way, and they still got us. Like, what can we do at this point? And the way that the Mets are constructed with that lineup, I mean, I know that Brandon Nimmo left the game today with a quad issue. We'll see how long that keeps him out. That's a lineup that, they put together good at-bats, yes, but that soft contact, as well as anybody, Matt, it doesn't play in the postseason. And the other part of it as well, I do think that it was strategic. I don't know this for a fact. I'm just taking a guess here. That it was strategic for the Mets to place Scherzer on the IL and kind of give him that rest. Because remember, too, that's a guy that burnt out last year. Once you saw him in Game 2 of the NLCS against the Braves, you didn't see him really the rest of the way because he was burnt out. He was done. So I think that's the other thing as well, is you've got 2 guys that are as good as there is in the game, but also two guys that at a moment's notice have shown you they can get hurt. And I think if you're the Mets, you stack up these teams against each other, and I understand our friend Sal Licata up in New York likes to say that the Mets are better. I don't think that there's a lot of teams that fear facing the Mets in the postseason. I understand Scherzer and I understand DeGrom. I understand Edwin Diaz at the end of the game. I think that probably there is a little bit more of, man, we got to be on our game if we're going to play the Braves, because you touched on it. This lineup can be, I think, next to the Dodgers, can be one of the best in baseball. And this pitching rotation is incredibly strong. And the back end of the bullpen, I mean, especially with the addition of Raisel Iglesias, AJ Mentor has been outstanding for you all season long. And I understand that, Matzek, scuffled a little bit today. And, you've also been able to, count pretty heavily as longer relief guys in Colin McHugh, and also, too, what a surprise Jesse Chavez has been. And, you've used him in high leverage situations. I know it didn't work out today, but he's been somebody else that's been a huge plus for this team. So this is a team that there's no doubt about it, Matt. They're built for the postseason. And I think just getting there right now, it was funny. I was in the clubhouse today, and I hope I'm not giving away too much, but I saw the return to October, the rise to October, whatever the shirts they got for making the postseason were. A bunch of them were slumped on chairs. Like, basically they were just saying, that ain't the goal. We got so much more to get to.
Yeah, and you mentioned that 9-hole, 138 hits, 24 home runs from your ninth hitter. I mean, that's just insane. And Bryce Elder today, this is like his third or fourth really good start with the team. I mean, you could add him into the bullpen as well. I mean, it's just the amount of talent this organization has right now is insane. And I mean, and they can bring somebody up just out of the, and fill them right in, and they just keep on ticking.
Yeah, I mean, and you bring up a great point with Elder as well. I mean, he gets the start today, obviously, because you want to be able to push back Strider. They don't think they're going to need to put him on the IL with a little bit of that oblique discomfort that he's working with right now. So hopefully that's not something that lingers for him, that it's just you sit him for a week and then you get him back, that stretch run there going into the Marlins and Mets series that you have at the end of the year. But you bring up an interesting point with Elder, and he pitched incredibly well today. I almost wonder if this is now going to be, kind of like I talked about, the strategy of it all right now. I wonder if you still keep him up here and he gets another start or two, and that is kind of the last spot on this postseason roster between he and Jake Odorizzi. Because, I think that, that's something else that you got to consider here as well, is you're going to have a starter or two in the bullpen that you're going to need to go to, in the third inning, maybe even in the second inning, wherever it is in the game. And I think that right now, Odorizzi doesn't necessarily give you a lot of confidence if you need to go to him to try to preserve a lead, or in a case, if you're down by 2 or 3 runs, to keep it there and keep you in the game. So I almost wonder if Bryce Elder, if it's hey, you pitched really well at AAA this year, we're going to give you a chance. And if indeed he is able to make the most of these chances, if indeed they do give him the chances, then that's another guy, you're exactly right, that you could look to in that pitching staff.
Yeah, and his control has been excellent. I mean, I remember that start he had in the Marlins. That was a big game. Michael Harris hit the 3-run homer to win or go ahead, or was it a 3-run homer?
Yep.
And that was a big win for the team. But and going back to the Mets, I mean, I don't know what they do with their pitchers. It seems like every year they have issues with their pitching staff. And I've watched Jacob deGrom. He can go about 6, and that's it. I mean, he might no hit you for 6 innings, but I mean, after that, he just kind of falls off. I mean, the Pirates got 3 runs off of him last Sunday, I think, up there in New York. So interesting development. So with the Braves, but I mean, do you think they have I think they have a great shot of repeating. I really do. I mean, and we all know that getting hot at the right time is the most important thing in the postseason. And it's like you said with, some of the guys that need to get hot, Riley being one of them. But I think these guys are pros and they know how to handle it, and they'll be ready.
No, I mean, one of the most valuable experiences I think this team went through was the heartbreak of losing to the Cardinals in 19, because I think it taught them what this time of year is like, that the at-bats are different, the innings are different. I mean, I think Colin McHugh had a line with us when he joined us on the Chuck and Chernoff show on 6A The Fan, where he said, outs and pitches almost count twice when you get them in the postseason. So, I mean, that just shows you the importance of postseason baseball. So I think that helped. 2020, being able to actually get out of the DS and get to the NLCS, no matter what, the playoff structure was that year, I think that helped a lot. And I think with those experiences, when they got to the NLDS against the Brewers, I mean, because remember, too, this was a Braves team that the way they played last year, had that been this year, we're not talking about this situation. We're probably actually talking about the way that we'd be talking about the Phillies of trying to find a way to get into the postseason, because the Mets would be ahead by 10 games right now. I mean, just playing that game of, they're at 500 up, they fell back 3 games up, they're at 500 again, and it took them until August to get over it. And I think that also, too, it helped playing postseason level baseball this time of the year. They're doing that right now. And I think that really does help once you get into the games and you are able to get to that time of the year. I mean, they've got the experience. They got the guys that moment is not going to be too big for them anymore. That's huge. You brought up the Mets. One thing, too, that I think is going to be really interesting to see in the postseason, look at the history of lights-out closers once they've gotten to the postseason and when they've been used a lot in the regular season. They have a really bad moment or two in the postseason. Now, Edwin Diaz is as good as there is in the game, but I've said it a lot. I understand Buck Showalter is being aggressive. I understand that he's trying, his best to be able to win some of these crucial games. That kind of seemed like desperation to me when he had him go for 2 innings in certain outings here recently. And I'm telling you right now, hitters in Major League Baseball are too good. There's too good of a book on guys, and when you get to that time of the year, somebody's looking to make a moment. And I think that right now, if you're the Mets, him being lights out the way he has, there can be a moment or two in the postseason. We've seen it happen in the past.
Yeah, if Nemo's out, that's a big loss if he's lost for an extended period of time, because that dude is a tough out. And I don't know why he doesn't steal more bases, because he's fast as lightning, but he doesn't really steal bases. And I think they got hurt doing that today. So, but that would be a big loss for them if he's out for an extended period of time.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, it's a lineup, too, that I'll give them credit for. The couple of thumpers they got in Alonso and in Lindor. I know that Vogelbach has been somebody they brought in to really try to fortify the power threat as well. They put together good at-bats, and they do put the bat on the ball, and it is frustrating, too, sometimes where, Luis Guillorme seems to be the king of soft contact. I mean, how many times in that 5-game series up there in New York did you just see him come up and you're just like, I can't wait for a little bloop over the third baseman's head to score 2 runs here. I mean, it seems like forever and a lifetime ago that you played that series up there, but it also shows you in baseball as well, you didn't feel too good coming out of that series, but remember, then the following week they came to you and you beat them 3 out of 4 at your place. So the good thing about the Braves, I think, is that they're not reactive. Sometimes when they're struggling, that's frustrating because you're kind of like, man, you know what? I wouldn't mind seeing a guy break a bat in the dugout, or I wouldn't mind seeing, somebody at least show that they care. They care. I think that's the good thing about them. I mean, I was talking about the lineup today in the postgame. I asked Snit, do you try to find a way to get, and I didn't mention names, but I was specifically talking about Olsen, Acuna, and, maybe even do you move some guys up the lineup, because I don't think it happens this year. But I would like to see a little bit more than Ronald Acuna Jr. in the leadoff spot, because I think he's a driver. I think he's a guy that you put him in the middle of the lineup and you tell him, tee off, go. I'd love to see Michael Harris II get a chance at the leadoff spot. And it might be too late in the season to do that. I mean, the approach completely changes, but I just think he's a guy that puts together great at-bats once you get him on base. I mean, the speed is there. He's aggressive. And also, too, he puts the ball in play. And that's something that I think – is something that really can help you out in the postseason as well.
Yeah, and Snicker, he seemed to be really he never shows any real emotions, and that's I love the guy. I mean, and that's why he's been so successful. But he seemed pretty upset about the base running today. And he was really focused on that today, and that was unusual.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, the major news in our market would be if he ever threw a player or a coach under the bus, because he's never going to do that. And I think that that's the other thing is as well, I talked about not being reactive, is he's not going to be a guy, we can't do that, all these things. I mean, the closest he came was, talking about, Contreras, hey, you got to be looking at the guy in front of you. And he's not wrong about that. I mean, because, when you round second base as a base runner, immediately you're looking to see you're picking up your third base coach, or also, too, along with that, you pick up the guy that's in front of you. Now, I think that to him, what he thought was ball that gets through, I'm going first to third, because that's into the gap right there. He's thinking that's going to be a really tough play, and I'm going to make them make a decision there of, do you want to try to get me at third? Because if you try to get me at third and you get me, it's the second out of the inning, that run scores. I just looking at it too, because that was the thing, with us up in the press box, I was there at Truist Park, we're looking up at the monitors and we're, seeing, because it looked like for the longest time, Wash had him going, Riley, and then at the last second, he put his hand up to stop. Hindsight, the benefit of that, I get that. Love Wash. Everybody loves Wash. Nobody will ever throw Wash under the bus. I think at that time, you just got to eat it and you got to send him.
Yep.
And, the throw was up the line. I mean, again, hindsight. But when he's coming like that, it's also, too, I mean, it could have been a situation there that could have been even worse the ball, the catcher gets it and you're too far off third base and you're hung up to dry there. And who knows also as well, does Contreras start trying to go back to second, or does he try to go to third and you're still 2 outs and runners on third? So not great base running. I mean, you're right. I mean, he talked about it where he said we had a meeting about base running because the reason why they won the world title last year, Matt, was because they were so good at the details. That's not being very good at the details. And I think that that's something more than anything he just kind of wanted to bring up as a point, was just saying like, hey, that can't happen if we're going to do what we did last year.
Yeah, and you're right about that. And he even said we're going to work on it in the spring training. So that was just, I mean, but look, it's the details like that. When you're playing a tight game and you make a mistake, it can cost you a ball game. So it is in the playoff baseball, you can't make mistakes. You got to play clean games, and that's how you win a title. It's hard to do.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I've been down in Northport seeing the pitchers fielding practice, the base running drills, you bring out the mat with the tarp over it for sliding drills, all those different types of things, skills and drills as they call it that time of the year. It's always a fun time, but only more fun is postseason baseball.
Well, Dan, let's shift over to SEC football. Of course, the Georgia Bulldogs. There was a talk. Well, they lost so many guys on defense. Oh, is Stetson Bennett? Is he he's small, but is he really that good? This team looks like a complete juggernaut right now, and I actually think they look better than they did last year because they seem to have more of a sense of urgency scoring the football. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's something, too, that over the offseason was really drilled home with the offensive unit was, you get Stetson Bennett back for his 6th season, and all of a sudden, finally, the Georgia fan base, for the most part, at least the Never Stetson crew out there, I guess we could call them, they kind of came around because it was, all right, we know what we have with this guy. He won us a national title. And he's somebody that can make plays in this offense. We don't know what we have in Brock Bowers. We especially don't know what we have in Brock Vandegrift. Gunnar Stockton's probably not ready. The Oregon game was something that I think, Georgia fans saw and said, wow, that could be exciting. That could be really fun. Where your leading receiver for the first few games was Kenny McIntosh out of the backfield. And, I heard a line the other day from somebody that made a whole lot of sense. They said Kenny McIntosh, I think, is what we envisioned that James Cook was going to be 3 years ago, of somebody that can make plays out of the backfield, somebody that can also be, your primary running back as well, and somebody that could really make a lot of plays for you. You lose A.D. Mitchell last week. I don't know what his status is going to be for this week. against Kent State, but he's somebody that has been a real downfield threat for them. Ladd McConkey continues to have that great rapport with Stetson Bennett, and he's been able to make plays. And also, too, Brock Bowers. I mean, it's kind of the first couple of weeks, it just shows you how good Brock Bowers is, that people were like, hey, man, where's Brock Bowers? Like, when's he going to get his chance to break out here? And then lo and behold, South Carolina, wow, he showed you. I mean, Matt, you've been covering this game long enough. There's not very many tight ends out there that can take it almost 80 yards on a catch and run, and he did. And you don't see a lot of, tight end arounds right there. So, I mean, that just, it just shows you the depth they've got at that group as well, that they can pretty much place him all over the field and make him an absolute matchup nightmare for opposing defenses. So, weapons aplenty for the offense. And then the defense, too, as well. I loved Kirby Smart's line that he said, people asked, what's this defense going to look like? He said, they just need to see a game is what they need to see. And they have. I think the group that had the most questions coming into this year was the inside linebacker group. And you've been able to get a lot of really good things there from Smile Mondin, from Tresman Marshall, from Jamon Dumas Pop Johnson, as well as somebody that's been able to fill in incredibly admirably for some really very large shoes to fill in what N'Kobe Dean and that crew did for you up the middle last year.
Yeah, and one thing with Kirby Smart, defense is never an issue, really. I mean, I don't think it is. I mean, just the way he recruits, the way he coaches. Man, that guy, I said this the other day, he never stops coaching, never. And his energy and, I know his dad was a coach, but, I mean, he was a great football player. And, I mean, I think, too, when the guys, they have to respect and listen to him because he was a good player and, and that means something, But I was going to say something. One kid that's really caught my eye is Malachi Starks.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, This guy, he looks like an All-American as a true freshman. And did he play quarterback last year in high school?
Yeah, I know that obviously he's a true freshman, but I mean, his history, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. In terms of the prep part of it all. I mean, that's why I have all the recruiting guys, the Rusty Mansells and the Chad Simmons and Woody Womax and all the recruiting experts out there, because they're able to pay attention to the high school game a lot more. But when you have a dynamic athlete like that, I mean, usually what happens in high school? Well, let's line him up at quarterback. He's going to have the ball in his hands the entire time, so that helps. A lot of times, too, coaches love those types of players where then they can put them on the defensive side of the football, because your ball recognition skills, your ball skills are already in your possession because you were used to having the football in your hands. And I think also, too, with having that anticipation of playing that position, it probably has helped his anticipation of, hey, I know, where to look for this ball coming out. I know where to, and also, too, I mean, playing in the secondary, you don't have a better coach than the guy that's your head coach, Kirby Smart. I mean, I've been out to plenty of practices. He is out there with guys that he takes a special interest in. I mean, I remember seeing years ago with D'Angelo Gibbs and the crew, he would almost be right next to them in walkthroughs whenever we could be out there seeing it, pointing and telling them where everything is. You don't get a lot of hands-on coaching like that. It's funny you say that, too, about Kirby Smart being, just an incredibly smart football mind. Is I always remember the story with him that it tells you his football chops is that he came on a blitz in the story that Matt Wyatt told us when he played at Mississippi State. He came on a blitz, Wyatt throws, smokes him, and Kirby gets up, and helps him up and says, "You should have thrown hot." And Matt Wyatt's like, "The hell you know about that?" He's like, "You're just some safety, get out of here. You don't know what you're talking about." But his point is he goes, that's just how smart of a player he was on the field when he was a player. And, he was just a natural coach, and somebody that, knows, studies the game and loves the game that much. And it shows with his players too. This is somebody that you're exactly right. I mean, he's relentless in a good way. I mean, he's relentless in recruiting. He never stops doing that. He's relentless in building a team. He never stops doing that. And even too, I mean, it's kind of, the comparisons are always there to his old boss at Alabama and how he coaches. And you see, Alabama could be up 48-7 and they give up a touchdown and he's lighting up Lane Kiffin, or whatever he's doing. And it's the old adage, they never stop coaching. He never stops coaching. And that is something that I think is also infectious to the rest of his team too, because they seem to play that way where they never give up and stop playing.
Dan, the Florida-Tennessee game, that used to be the cream of the crop, back in the day with Spurrier and Fulmer and Peyton Manning and all those guys. Finally, it looks like we're going to have a big-time showdown with that game. To me right now, I think Tennessee is the third best team in the SEC just because their scoring power. Cedric Tillman, to me, is one of the best players in the country. Hendon Hooker is as well. The way that offense operates. What's your take on this team? Does Florida have a shot to go in there and beat them, or is Tennessee, do you think Tennessee kind of wins this game handily?
It depends on what version of Anthony Richardson you get, because I think that we've seen a quarterback who has been wildly inconsistent in the passing game. And also, too, I think you're seeing defenses key in a little bit on his running ability and starting to take away those rushing lanes for him. You figured that probably was going to be the case against Kentucky, and Mark Stoops and his defensive coaching staff did a fantastic job of really trying to say, okay, if you're going to beat us, you're going to beat us throwing the football. And then you saw last week where they had that close call against USF. I think that more than anything with that game against USF is this is a team under a new coaching staff. And usually when you're under a new coaching staff, you have that bad moment. For LSU, it happened earlier on in the season. And then a couple of weeks later, they were able to beat a pretty good Mississippi State team with a very strong second half. And, that was something that was huge for Brian Kelly and his team to see last week. I think that there's a little bit of that growing pains with the Florida team right now because there's still talent on that roster. There's no doubt about it. To your point, though, I think that Tennessee is a much improved team. They're very good on offense. They're a little banged up in the running game right now. At least that's what Ryan Callahan, when he joined us today on the Chuck Oliver show from Go Vols 247, that's what he said. But you're exactly right. Cedric Tillman's been an outstanding weapon in that passing game. You see Hendon Hooker, no interceptions. That's good. 6 touchdowns. That's good. 70% completion. So, you maybe like to see those numbers improve just a little bit. But we've seen also a Tennessee team that went up to Pittsburgh and won a very tough game against a very good Pittsburgh team. Now, I understand they knocked out their quarterback, all those different things, but still, you still beat the ACC champions from last year at their place. That's got to count for something. So, I've talked about it all off season, and I even talked about it a little bit today. I think Tennessee is one of those programs that went into last year hoping they could win games. Now I think they believe that they can win games. And, you're going to be playing there in Neyland Stadium. It's going to be a raucous atmosphere on Saturday. I think it's a huge step forward if they win that game where you go into a tough October where, of course, what's ahead of you in that third week of the season. But for Tennessee, if they're able to pick up this win, it's huge. For Florida, if they're able to pick up this win and go on the road and pick up a win, I think for them, it says, all right, last week, we scuffled through that game. We got to win. That's the most important part. But, things are at least progressing forward, maybe a little bit faster than we thought they could as a team. I think, again, if Tennessee wins it, then that's a team that, as those tough games come in October and November, they're going to go into with a lot of confidence in those games.
Yeah, and you mentioned LSU. It was good for Malik Neighbors was the kid who fumbled the 2 punts in the opener against Florida State, and that was just a complete breakdown on special teams for LSU. But Florida State's a pretty good team. I think this LSU team is going to be dangerous, though, moving forward, just because Jaden Daniels can run and throw. And this true freshman, Harold Perkins at linebacker, he's a stud. And B.J. Ojulari, he's a stud. And their safety, Jay Ward. And I think they're only going to get better under Brian Kelly. But, what's your take on them? And I was going to get your take, too, on the Arkansas A&M game.
Sure.
To me, that game is going to be the first of 20 wins the game because it's going to be that kind of a game. But I just hadn't been that impressed with Texas A&M. And do you think – I know I'm asking you multiple questions here, but is Jimbo Fisher in any kind of trouble, do you think?
Well, I'll start first with LSU. I completely agree with you. And I understand that, when they lost that game, you had people who were ready to pounce on Brian Kelly. It's the lowest hanging fruit, and it's the, when he went to LSU, well, he's never going to win anything there. I said, he made Notre Dame relevant. Name the last coach that made Notre Dame relevant and put guys in the league at Notre Dame and continuously developed and continuously coached up teams that probably were playing better than what their record showed that they were. So I think that's something that comes into play at LSU. I think last week did a lot of numbers for them in terms of confidence. I think the biggest thing, Matt, is twofold on offense. I think it did them a lot of good confidence-wise that offensive line is starting to come together. And you've got Cam Wire there on the outside. You got another true freshman on the right side as well. That's a young group, but it's a talented group. And if they can get going, then that's another part, like you said, with Jaden Daniels' rushing ability, that could also be dangerous for opposing teams. And if you are able to get the running game going, I mean, you got the long run by Armani Goodwin to seal it against Mississippi State. You're probably going to need to knock off a lot of rust on John Emery Jr. because he didn't get to play all of last year. He didn't get to play the first couple of games this year. So it's going to be interesting to see how much they use him. I think he's probably going to be used a lot this weekend against New Mexico because they're really just trying to get him as many carries and as many reps as possible to get going forward. I think for A&M, I said coming into this season that those first two games were going to be tougher than people thought. The Sam Houston State game coming into that one, you need to remember that Sam Houston State just a couple of years ago won the FCS National Championship. That has been a program that has been building for some time, and also, too, being able to get a lot of players through the transfer portal from the FBS level to come to Huntsville, Texas, and play. You have a former Division I quarterback, a former FBS quarterback in Jordan Yates as their quarterback, too. So somebody who's played FBS football, that was going against them in that first week. They win that one 31-0. Okay, that's fine. You had an Appalachian State team come into them the following week that had won 10 games the year before, and everybody talks about Stetson Bennett being somebody who's played for about 6 or 7 years. Chase Bryce has played for about 6 or 7 years, and he played like a quarterback that had a lot of experience in that game. Now, offensively, they were not anywhere close to what they, thought that they were going to get with Haynes King at the quarterback. So obviously, Jimbo Fisher looked at the situation and said, I got to make a change, and I've got to make it now. And he goes with Max Johnson. Max Johnson is a guy that when he was at LSU, he showed you he's willing to take some chances, and he's willing to make some throws. And sometimes he's willing to take some chances that coaches and fans alike do this as like, oh, come on, man, what are you doing here? You understand the aggressiveness, but also, too, at the same time, you're just kind of like, you got to be smarter with the football. So I think that's the thing with A&M is, I was talking with another guy on our show today talking about this matchup, John Neighbors from 103.7 The Buzz there in Little Rock, and he talked about how A&M's defense could be a concern this weekend. For Arkansas, I think last week it was a little bit of a surprise for them, and that was something, too, that you got to a certain point in that game where Arkansas fans were like, we can't really let Bobby Petrino come in here and beat us with Missouri State. I mean, like, what are we doing here? And, later on in the game, they showed how good they are, but their running game has been fantastic with Rocket Sanders. They've got a very good offensive line. Sam Pittman, that's a staple for Sam Pittman. And also, too, you got a receiving game that's been pretty strong where you brought in a couple of really key offensive transfers in Matt Landers, who's had a lot of experience in SEC football when he was at Georgia, and also, too, in Jaden Hazelwood, who never really got it going at Oklahoma, but has at least found something in Kendall Briles' offense so far there at Arkansas. And then Trey Knox has been somebody else that's been strong for them. Again, getting back to my conversation I had with John Neighbors today, Drew Sanders has been an absolute outstanding addition for Barry Odom's defense. I think that the better team is Arkansas. I think that probably the hungrier team in this one, if I had to say who would be between the two, is A&M, because for Arkansas, they lose this game. Yes, it doesn't get any easier, but it's one loss, and you can hopefully be able to try to bounce back from that. A&M, if they have 2 losses already, and you've still got to play Alabama, and you still got to play LSU at the end of the year, and you got to play the rest of the SEC West schedule, I think that all of a sudden A&M fans, to your point, Jimbo Fisher's not going anywhere, but I think that probably you start to see A&M fans, if they lose some of these games, say, The hell are we paying? What are we paying $9.5 million for to see this? We're seeing the same results we saw with Kevin Sumlin. We're seeing the same results we've seen with Mike Sherman and Dennis Franchione before them. So it's a fan base that is just tired of mediocrity, and they're ready to get theirs. They've seen how Georgia has been able to build up their program, and I think that A&M fans probably looked at Georgia and said, that's kind of us in where they were, where everybody said that's a sleeping giant there in Athens. I think that, the other thing is as well, is I was talking with somebody about this today, and they brought up a point that I was like, God, I hadn't really thought about it that way. Why are there still some of these issues that are keeping A&M back from being an elite team in Jimbo Fisher's 5th season? So I think that that's going to start to spread amongst the fan base, that maybe it's just going to be, I don't know if this guy necessarily can recreate what he did at Florida State when he had Jameis Winston there. Short of getting a game-changing quarterback, which game-changing quarterbacks make coaches. Look at Ed Ogeron with Joe Burrow. Look at what Vince Young did for Mac Brown and Colt McCoy did for Mac Brown when they were at Texas. So, I get that people, he can't win unless he's got a game-changing quarterback. Tell me who the hell can't win if you have a game-changing quarterback. That's the whole point. So, I think that more than anything, that's what starts to creep in with A&M fans. If indeed this season doesn't go the way that they think it can. I think 8-4 is an outstanding job by that team. 9-3, better than that. With that schedule, that's an outstanding season, although I don't know if Aggie fans would see it that way.
Yeah, and you mentioned Appalachian State. I watched them play North Carolina. They should have won that game. They should be undefeated right now. That is a good football team. They got a good offensive line, a good running back. I like their scheme and what they do on offense, good coaching. And I was going to wrap it up here with you. I know it's getting late over there. And what was your, Alabama? Okay, for the first time in a couple of years. I mean, and I think it took Alabama fans by surprise how Texas kind of pushed them around, especially on the offensive line. I mean, and the mistakes that they made. I had never seen. You don't usually see an Alabama team make 15 penalties, and I think they're going to be fine defensively. I think you can get them at cornerback. I think you can get them. You got to get receiver. But what's your take on them? And do you think is there anybody in the West that can challenge these guys? Because I think there's potential there for some teams to do that.
I think this weekend's going to tell a lot with Arkansas, because if they win this game and they're 4-0, I got to believe the following week it's going to be Alabama there in Fayetteville. Game day will be there. That Brad and Gary will be there. It's going to be a fun atmosphere there at Reynolds Stadium. I think that Arkansas could be one. Because that's a team that believes in their coaching. They believe in Sam Pittman and what he has been preaching to them for the last few years about, look at what you've done for the state. Look at all these people now who, when they come to these games, they expect you to win. And also, too, you got two outstanding coordinators on that Arkansas team, and Kendall Briles, and I get, what his last name carries, but he's somebody that I think probably, if Sam Pittman signs off on him, has a really good shot at getting a chance at being a head coach somewhere this offseason. Because, again, if somebody goes to Sam Pittman and says, hey, will you vouch for this guy? And he says, yeah, then I think that's going to be enough for people just because of the reputation he has. And Barry Odom as well. I know that Barry Odom had chances to leave Arkansas and really appreciates that, Sam Pittman has given him the chance to run his defense and really set it up the way that he wants to. And I think that, when you have that type of situation, I've said that Arkansas could become kind of the Clemson of the SEC. And here's what I mean, where Dabo seemingly lets his coaches coach. He takes care of his coaches financially. And also, too, it's something that, if players look at that, they say, they're letting those guys do their jobs. They're going to let us do our jobs, too. I want to play in that. I want to be a part of that. So I think that helps as well. So I think that top to bottom, Arkansas is a team that you look at and really they could be a challenge to Alabama. Ole Miss is a team that is really able to run the football pretty well. They did that last weekend against a very struggling Georgia Tech team, but I still would probably put Arkansas ahead of them. It's going to be interesting to see how Mississippi State bounces back. You have a lot of experience on that team, but that was also a team, too, that I think got punched last week, and they really didn't have an answer. Now, it's tough sometimes at Tiger Stadium to have that. That's not a good venue to try to get right, and they couldn't get right in that game. It'll be interesting to see if Zach Arnett and the defensive staff can get that unit back on track, and the same deal with Mike Leach as well. So if I had to really say who the biggest challenger is to Alabama in the West right now, I would definitely go with Arkansas. We'll see what they bring this weekend because, again, that's going to be a team that's going to be fired up to see Alabama on the other sideline the following week. I will close with this, though, Matt. I will say this. I never fall into the trap of thinking this is the beginning of the end with Nick Saban, because it seems like whenever we do that, that's when he's got us, and that's when he's got everybody, and that's when he pops a performance in a game where you say, oh, man, I didn't see them beating them by 30. Did you see that coming? And it seems like that they've still got that. They got the talent to do it. I think that's an offensive line that in that Texas game, they did get bullied a little bit. And I think that that's something that probably was a little shot to the confidence in that game. I think they're looking to bounce back and step forward. We saw it happen last year where they had an awful performance in the Iron Bowl, and then the following week, they cleaned up those mistakes and played incredibly well in the SEC championship game against Georgia. I think also, too, as well, I mean, are you able to get Jermaine Burton going? Are you able to get Cameron Latu going? Are you able to get, Jahmyr Gibbs going in the backfield as well? And you talked about the defense. I mean, that's a defense that they made some uncharacteristic mistakes in that Texas game. They got out of it with a win. We've seen that before in the past as well. And then you've been through enough of those press conferences with Nick Saban where, he stands up there and says, isn't it good enough to win a ball game? But I never count them out until they have, more than one loss in the regular season. And until 2019, the only other time I've seen that while Nick Saban's been there since this run is really starting to get going was 2010. So when you got a track record like that, I truly believe you're still one of the best.
I hear you, Dan, and I didn't understand what Mike Leach was doing on a couple of those play calls on going on 4th and 1, and you were in total control of the game. And the muff punt on the 10. What is the cardinal rule about inside the 10 on a punt?
Let it go.
And I'm seeing guys doing it everywhere. I'm like, well, dude, is nobody coaching y'all this? I mean, it blows my mind. But buddy, hey, I appreciate you taking the time. Great stuff. And Where can people listen to you on the radio tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely. So going to be on the Chuck Oliver Show, 11 to 1 Eastern. That's the live show. The beauty of digital media now, too, is we've got the Southern Sports Today app. So if you missed the show live at that time, 11 to 1 Eastern, then it plays in 2-hour increments as a whole. We also posted on the podcast, hour 1, hour 2. Take out the commercial breaks, and you're able to listen to the show that way. So that's another way that you can do it as well. Not sure if tomorrow, which initially we were scheduled to have him tomorrow, but if it's not tomorrow, then definitely going to be on Friday. Speaking of LSU, former wide receivers coach, now interim head coach at Nebraska, Mickey Joseph, is scheduled to join us on the show. But yeah, I mean, looking forward to getting more into Tennessee and Florida. We'll be talking some Florida. Going to be talking Ohio State's got a big game this weekend, so sometimes we do go outside the southern footprint. Like today, we talked with Taylor Estes of Horns 24/7, talk some Texas Longhorns, and we'll do it tomorrow with Tim Hall of 97.1, the Fan up there in Columbus, Ohio, as they take on Wisconsin this weekend. So all college football all the time, as Chuck says. So you got us there, and then, of course, 2 to 6 weekday afternoons on 6A The Fan with Chuck and Chernoff. So a lot of fun, that's for sure.
Well, Dan, I really appreciate it, buddy, and you have a good one, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome, Matt. Hey, always great to catch up with you, buddy, and let's do it again soon.
Yes, sir, man. Take care.
See you, buddy.
See ya.